Bills Mafia. On tonight's Air Raid Hour, Dave and I will be walking through the Buffalo Bills 2024 schedule, previewing their opponents and tiering each opponent by level of difficulty. After we do all that, we will give our way too early Buffalo Bills 2024 record predictions. All that and more. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour, brought to you by Picasso's Pizza and the Cover One Sports Network. Dave, we finally have it. We knew all the opponents, but now we know the chronological order in which we will play them. We had the debates this week on social media. What were the primetime games looking like, etc. For people who often travel to games, it's also a big week for them because they get to start their planning. Fortunately for me, don't quite have the money with a newborn at home to be traveling myself. I don't even think I'm going to make a home game in Buffalo this year like I was able to last year. But a big week in the NFL, a big week for Bills Mafia. And here we are today. We're going to use that as a tool to start tiering the Bills 2024 opponents.
Yeah, and obviously with the way our schedule lined up, we're kind of, coming in here a little bit later from all the knee-jerk reactions, right, that we had last week. So we've had a chance to kind of really look at the schedule. This is our first chance to really share with the audience our thoughts on sort of how these opponents look, how the overall sequencing of the schedule kind of came out, how we feel about the primetime slots, etc. So really, this is our first chance to share with the audience that, and I'm excited because this is always kind of a fun show for us.
And as a disclaimer, everything we say tonight is honestly completely meaningless because by the time we face a team week 10, it's probably not going to look on paper or in reality what that team looks like right now in, late May. Brandon Beane had an appearance with Chris Long, and he even said, like, if you have a team in your division that you play week 2 or 3, and then you play them week 15 or 16, you're not playing the same team. After 14 weeks of an NFL season has passed, it's a drastically different team that you're playing weeks and weeks later if you have a division opponent that you play twice a year.
Yeah, and I think in a way, you start to look at some of the interesting points about this schedule. You see that the Bills play New England in 2 of the last 3 games, and obviously they play 3 straight division games in the season. And it's like, on one hand, you're like, oh, will the wheels have totally fallen off for Drake May and co at that point, and Jared Mayo as the head coach, or will they be
hitting their stride?
Have found their stride? And so
Right.
you just don't know what it's going to look like at the end of the year.
The Arizona Cardinals we see, knock on wood, week 1 could be not great, but then they could be pushing for a wild card spot by the time they play New England the week before New England comes to Buffalo in week 16. That's why I would have liked a couple of the teams on our schedule that come later, like Tennessee and Indianapolis with Anthony Richardson coming back. I would have loved to have seen some of those teams earlier on in the Buffalo Bills schedule. And you mentioned the New England thing, and Brandon Beane even said to Chris Long on Chris Long's podcast, he was like, yeah, super weird that we're playing New England twice in 3 weeks. It's like, that's very unusual. And that's one of the rare times where when you see a team twice in a year, they'll be the exact same team, minus like a major injury happening in the first game or the week in between. That's one of those rare instances where you're playing a division rival and they literally are the same team 1 week, and then the time you play them the next time.
Exactly. And I mean, like, you're right about like Tennessee and Indy. They are in the first half of the schedule, but yes, the Dolphins week 2, week 9, the Jets first half of the season, second to last game of the season. So New England is really that one that's kind of stands out as being a little bit of an oddity, but we've seen this in years past with other divisional games. We've seen Denver and Kansas City play each other in close proximity within 2-3 weeks of each other within the last couple seasons. And we've seen that happen on a few different occasions, but again, like you said with the Cardinals, maybe that's an advantage for the Bills
Mhm.
taking them on in week 1. That Cardinals team may get better as the season goes on, at least that's what I think as well. May not be as big of an advantage,
Mhm.
or it could be a disadvantage to be playing New England that late for them to get their stride. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
So what we're going to do this evening is we're going to walk through the schedule week by week. And as we walk through each opponent, we are going to sort of have a little debate between the two of us, and we're going to categorize each game into one of 3 tiers. And there are 3 tiers that I have created for this exercise. The first tier is a straight 50-50 game. I don't think, as long as Josh Allen is quarterback of the Buffalo Bills, they will ever be worse than a 50-50 shot to beat an opponent. Yes, there's going to be games this year where teams maybe have a betting like 3-point favor, right? In terms of, Vegas and all that stuff. But there's no opponent in the National Football League the Buffalo Bills cannot beat on any given Sunday with Josh Allen as the starting quarterback. So at worst, we're going to have a 50-50 game. The next tier I have are games that the Bills should win, but it's still like a pretty decent opponent. So I put those as sort of the 55-45 tier, 55-45 game. And I have a lot more respect for a lot of teams in the National Football League than I think maybe some more casual fans do. I'm never willing to say something is more than a 60-40 game. We've seen the Buffalo Bills lose to the Urban Meyer Jaguars, right?
Mhm.
Football,
Mhm.
there's parity, right? And so even when the Buffalo Bills are we've seen the Buffalo Bills be 2 touchdown favorites playing teams like, the Denver Broncos and all those Zach Wilson, and we've seen them lose games in the National Football League. So the worst I'm willing to go in a tier is 60-40 for this exercise. So we've sort of created these 3 tiers, and by the time we're done, we're going to see, hey, how many 50-50 games do the Bills have on their schedule? How many 55-45 games do the Bills have on their schedule? How many 60-40 games do the Bills have on their schedule? And we'll utilize that information to make our record predictions. So let's start with week 1
Mhm.
and the Arizona Cardinals. The negatives going into this game. Arizona Cardinals are a desert team, a dome team. They probably aren't going to have to deal with much weather in Western New York in September, 1 p.m. on CBS. It's also easier to travel West Coast to East Coast week 1 when you have more time to sort of prepare yourself than it is coming off of a game. So those are the negatives. The Bills really don't get the travel advantage that they normally get with the team coming from the West Coast to the East Coast. The positives, the Arizona Cardinals are going through a lot of roster turnover. They're in the middle of a full-scale rebuild out here in Phoenix. I can say that because I live in Phoenix. Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr., it's still going to be early in their gelling process. So the Buffalo Bills have that to their advantage as well. To me, I say this with the caveat, don't sleep on the 2024 Cardinals, because I think by the end of the year, even though they're in a tough division, they're going to be pushing 7, 8, 9, 10 wins, and they might be a legitimate wild card threat in the NFC. I, I I'm a believer in Jonathan Gannon and what he can do with that defense, and I think they have enough skill in that offense now to put something together. But to me, week 1, if you're the Buffalo Bills and you're a legitimate contender for a Super Bowl in 2024, this has got to be a 60-40 game in my book.
I agree, and for all the reasons you mentioned, right? You don't get like, especially to me in this situation with the Cardinals traveling
Mhm.
from the west to the east in week 1, that really is not going to be as much of a disadvantage, I would say, as it would be during the course of the normal sort of course of the season. Now, it is still a West Coast team coming east. It is still the
Mhm.
Cardinals coming into Highmark on opening weekend. It's gonna be a crazy crowd, and that's obviously gonna be difficult for them to handle, new personnel, obviously, but they do have some skilled position players that are interesting. They added Trey Benson to pair with James Conner. They obviously drafted Marvin Harrison Jr., but I do think in week 1, that is gonna be a tall order for the Cards to get it all right, and this to me, I agree with you, starting out is a 60-40 game for the Bills.
All right, on to week 2 of the schedule. This is a short week, Thursday night football on Amazon at 8:15 at the Miami Dolphins. The negatives for this game, it is a short week, obviously, but both teams are dealing with it. The positives, we don't have to deal with the heat in Miami in September like we would if it was a day game. And since the Buffalo Bills it's so early in the season. You can use some of your preseason sort of getting your planning ahead for the Miami Dolphins. So the planning and execution part might not be as complicated as if it was in the middle of the season and your time was being zapped up by preparing for the 3, 4, 5 opponents beforehand. So there are those positive aspects to this game. Still, to me, it's a 50-50 game. I would consider 55-45, Dave. Maybe you can convince me, because really the Miami Dolphins have not shown, outside of 120-degree sideline for the Buffalo Bills, that they can beat this team.
Yeah, I mean, history would show in the Josh Allen era that this is a game that the Bills have done well in. The Bills have really done well against the Dolphins over the last 5 odd years since Josh Allen's been the quarterback. However, this game is on the road. It is a short week.
Mhm.
It's early in the season, which means you would certainly expect that Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, like they're going to be fully healthy, fully ready to go in this game. You might not get the sunlight heat, but it's still early in the season in Miami. It'll be muggy. It'll be humid, I'm sure. Not to say that that's going to necessarily have a huge impact negatively on the Bills, but it's still going to be muggy right out there. And there is a lot of sour taste, I'm sure, in the Miami Dolphins' mouth and in their locker room after the way that the Bills kind of took care of them in week 18 last year in the 17th game of the season. I'm putting this as a 50-50 game to start out, especially with it being on the road.
Mhm. People agree. Claude Puig comes in, says 50-50. RJ Melville says definitely a 50-50 game as well. On to week number 3. Week number 3 is the Jacksonville Jaguars at home on Monday Night Football. This is part of a Monday night doubleheader, so the game is a little bit earlier at 7:30. The Bills always seem to end up on Monday Night Football as part of these early season double headers. I don't know what it is, but thankfully we don't have to listen to Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. We get the Dan Orlovsky crew and the Louis Riddick crew probably. But the negatives for this game, Jacksonville for some reason has our number, right?
Yeah,
I don't know
they
what
do.
it is.
They do.
It's just a jinx at this point. Like I think Joe Marino on his podcast said even his wife was telling him, like, why does this game have to be on prime time? We're gonna get like embarrassed. We're gonna lose a game we shouldn't. Like something weird's gonna happen. Like why can't the shame just be tucked away on a Sunday at 1 p.m.? And I agree. So this is a Monday night game against Gabe Davis, Trevor Lawrence, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. The positives: the Bills will have the home crowd. They will have 10 days rest, and that will be a 2-day prep advantage on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I put this game as a 55-45 game. Where do you have this game at?
I think we're going to have to put this one maybe right on the line there between the 50-50 and the 55-45. I mean, I think, yes, I think it's probably closer to a 55-45 game. The Bills' history against the Jags shows you that's probably closer to maybe a 50-50 game, but not traveling to London, obviously, this year. You would expect that hopefully the Bills have better injury luck in this game than they did a year ago. And also, the Jags are going through their own sort of changes personnel-wise as well, right? You have to remember, like, no Calvin Ridley. They bring Gabe Davis in, obviously, to kind of, like, replace him. They still have Travis Etienne, who had just a monster game against the Bills in London last year. And they still have some young, good players on the defense. So I say put that Jags logo maybe right on that line there between the 50-50 and the 55-45, and that's kind of where I'm putting them. Yeah, I think that's where they should go right there.
On to week number 4 now. We are at the Baltimore Ravens, and this is now our 3rd consecutive game in prime time, 8:20 on NBC. So the negatives: it's a short week coming off Monday Night Football. It's on the road. The Ravens have a 1-day rest advantage. The positives: it's early in the season. There's a new defensive coordinator in Baltimore. They have roster turnover. They have to work and figure out how Derrick Henry is going to fit into that offense. They're still meshing. Maybe the Buffalo Bills can take some advantage of that. To me, 50-50, right? And despite all of that, it's still one of the premier teams in the AFC, 50-50.
Yeah, this is 50-50. I mean, you're talking about the team that was in the AFC Championship game last year.
Mhm.
Lamar Jackson kind of paired with Derrick Henry is going to be super interesting to me this year because the Bills historically have done well against Derrick Henry and is limiting his yards per carry when he's been on the Tennessee Titans. However, this is an interesting dynamic
Mhm.
now this year with Lamar Jackson paired as a threat to run with Derrick Henry as kind of the thunder to that. So in Baltimore early in the season, I mean, this is a 50-50 game.
Mhm. Claude Puy says Baltimore has a 60-40 advantage, and that's
I mean,
I
I would
think it's
tend
I think
to fair.
yeah, like they're the home team, right? So they have the rest advantage. If there were games where I was gonna be like, yeah, I'm the Bills are the true underdogs. This would be one of those games that I would circle and be like, yeah, the Bills are truly an underdog. But I think I'm just at a point, and maybe this is a little narcissistic, maybe this is a little too much hubris, but as long as Josh Allen is the quarterback of the Buffalo Bills, I really don't feel like there's any game we can't win.
I
So to
mean,
me, until something drastically changes or the Bills go out there in 2024 and show they aren't who we think they are, I, I struggle. I struggle to ever say like, man, I'd be shocked if the Bills won that game. like
yeah,
that's just me personally.
and I mean, I know it's different teams, but the last 2 times the Bills played the
Mhm.
Ravens, they beat them on the road in rainy conditions in Baltimore, and then the game before that, they beat them in the playoffs, right? Obviously, it was in Buffalo, so the Bills, even though against tough opponent, Baltimore Ravens, always a tough opponent, they've won 2 times in a row against this team, so as good as the Ravens are, the Bills can beat this team, and so
Mhm.
I think it's a 50-50 game.
The next game, week 5, we are at the Houston Texans. Probably the biggest shock is that this game is tucked into the 1 p.m. window on CBS. I was
Mm.
listening to Jim Nantz have a conversation on the Rich Eisen show, and he even said, like, hey, not every single game can be put in a primetime window. I won't even be Jim Nantz is a Houston guy. He's like, I would have loved to have been calling this game. I'm going to be in Kansas City or whatever at 4:25 as they play whoever they play that week. Someone else is that the B team is going to have that 1 p.m. game for the Houston Texans and the Buffalo Bills, but it will probably be the national 1 p.m. game. So a lot of eyes will be on that game. A lot of national attention will be on that game. I think the negatives is obviously we're coming off Sunday Night Football, so it's a semi-short week. But the positives are the fact that I think it's a 1 p.m. game. There will be less Alan Diggs drama, maybe sideshow, maybe distraction, because this game is just your typical run of the mill 1 p.m. game as opposed to sort of that prime time treatment. None of the network still will because it's a story, but maybe they won't hammer it home as hard because it's not one of those primetime games. So to me, it's 50-50, but I really do think that there is positives in the fact that this is a 1 p.m. game. I'm fully sold on these Houston Texans, by the way. CJ Stroud, all the weapons they have on offense, Bobby Slowick calling the plays, D'Amico Ryans, all the talent they added to that defense. So to me, 50-50 game.
Yeah, this one I think is a 50-50. I mean, the Texans will be at home second week in a row. They played Jacksonville at home the week prior, so they'll be nice and comfortable being at home. I do like that it's a 1 p.m. game. The Texans are legit. I think this is the best game on the slate in week 5, even when you
Mm,
look at all the games that are in prime time as well. To me, this is the best game on the slate in week 5. Big fan of CJ Stroud. I love D'Amico Ryans, what he's doing in Houston. A rare, well, we'll see if the roof is open, but a very rare
mhm.
possible indoor game for the Bills as well. They haven't had a ton of those, even with the schedules they've had in recent years. So I think this is going to be a tough one. Texans fans are going to be up for this 50-50 for sure, especially being on the road.
So now we head into week 6. We get our second game in the AFC East. We are at the New York Jets. 8:15 ESPN. It's a Monday Night Football game. The negatives, third straight road game. That's pretty brutal. 3 straight road games early on in the season, especially considering there's an imbalance in our schedule this year. We have more road games than home games. So I guess it was to be expected. You would see at least one stretch like this. You have the MetLife turf. 6 weeks is probably enough time for Aaron Rodgers to get back into a groove as well. The positives, The Jets are coming back from London, so we have that advantage going for us. To me, the Jets being at home, the Jets defense proving it can be an issue for Josh Allen at times, I'm going with a 50-50 game here.
This is going to be a tough game for the Bills. I do like that the Jets are coming back from London the week before.
Mhm.
That's certainly an advantage. Don't love the way that the Bills have played offensively against this Jets defense in recent years. And I just feel like this is going to be a tough spot for the Bills. I would kind of maybe put them on that line, kind of like we put with the Jags, like closer to not necessarily a pure 50-50. I think the Bills still will have an advantage, but I'm fine if you want to put them in that 50-50 slot here,
Mhm.
especially being on the road. And the Bills really have not played their best against that Jets defense in the recent years. So
And
I'm kind of
I just double checked because someone said they thought it was Germany. It's the Tottenham Stadium, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So it is London for the Jets. Not that it it really matters. Laura comes in and says the Jets defense is crazy, and yeah, they've given Josh Allen fits, but I mean he did well when the Buffalo Bills played them at home in the back half of the season. That was one of the games. That was the game I had the pleasure to go to last year. The big Khalil Shakir play. Ty Johnson came up big in that game. But yeah, with the Jets being at home, I think this one, as you said, is a 50-50 game. All right. That leads us now to week number 7, 1 p.m. on CBS versus the Tennessee Titans. The negatives. It's a short week. The Titans are going to have a 1-day rest advantage. And it's sort of like a 1 p.m. game after 3 straight road games and 4 out of 5 games in prime time. So just like a lot of the energy might be sort of sucked out of the Buffalo Bills. This could be a trap game for the Buffalo Bills. The positives are you are back in your comfort zone at home. There's a little bit more normalcy at 1 p.m. The crowd is going to be loud, can get you juiced, maybe get through some of that tiredness you might be feeling after that stretch I just mentioned. I, again, do not sleep on the Tennessee Titans because this is a team that I think could compete if everything clicks. They've had 6 weeks to gel, Will Levis with Brian Callahan and all his new weapons and that defense, etc. But to me, again, if you're the Buffalo Bills and you want to call yourself or consider yourself a Super Bowl contender, this has got to be a 60-40 game to me. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, this is one of the few that we'll end up seeing probably tonight on our board here as a 60-40
Mhm.
game playing at home. The Titans do usually play us hard, and it is a short week for us, though. This is going to come down to Will Levis for the Titans, right? He's got the new toys and Calvin
Mhm.
Ridley, got Tony Pollard now in tow instead of Derrick Henry. So Ridley, Hopkins, right, with Will Levis and then Tony Pollard out of the backfield. It'll really come down, I think, to Tennessee's defense. Are they going to be able to slow down the Buffalo Bills offense? The Bills absolutely demolished the Titans 2 years ago when they played them early in the season at home. They put up like 47 something points the
Mhm.
last time these two teams played. So at least for now, I'm going to go
Yeah.
with a 60-40 game for this
I
one.
think it'll be I think it'll be this could be a game where all of a sudden it's a 50-50 game because Will Levis gets off to this like hot start. It's like, okay, cool. He's going to be the guy in Tennessee, right? And we're talking about this game. We're doing our pregame show and it's a 50-50 game. Or it could be like another way around. Like they had Mike Vrabel there for so long and now it's Brian Callahan's show and there's so many new pieces. Like, is Will Levis the guy? Maybe by week 7, it's apparent that he's not, or there's still growing pains. I mean, Brian Callahan is a West Coast type of guy, a timing based type of offense. They were having this conversation on Lockdown Bills, and Will Levis is sort of like that gunslinger, big arm type of guy. Is he a timing rhythm passer? Is there some gelling issues there? Is it going to take a little bit of time?
Mm.
So for now, on paper, I think it's 60-40 because the Titans still have a lot to prove, but that margin could certainly close by the time this game happens in reality. This is one of those games where it could be drastically different when we're talking about it on the pregame show than the conversation that we are having right now. Week 8, the Buffalo Bills go on the road for the first of one of their 2 West Coast swings this year. It's a 4:05 p.m. game on Fox at the Seattle Seahawks.
Mm.
Obviously, the negatives are it is a West Coast trip. The positive here Seattle is on the East Coast the week previous,
Yep.
playing Atlanta. So they're coming back to the West Coast as well. To me, I say 55-45 Bills, but I think I would understand where people are coming from if they say 50-50 because, again, new coach, you don't know how things are going to gel, how things are going to be different. Mike McDonald might be like that dude. And this team looks a little bit different than the Pete Carroll Seahawks because if this was the Pete Carroll Seahawks, it would be 55-45 for me, like clear as day.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, like Geno Smith had that great 2022, came back down to earth a little bit in 2023, obviously had a couple injuries here and there. Um, is it that trio going to kind of gel and become something more than what they were last year? Is JSN going to kind of step up and be like a dude this year? He had flashes last year, obviously towards the end of the season, made that nice game-winning catch on prime time. But Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith, and Jigba could be an issue.
Mhm.
Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet could be an issue too. That place is tough to play in. Seattle is one of the toughest places to play in and go on the road and play. But to me, I think that because Geno Smith had that little bit of a down year last year, and I think that's probably closer to who he really is than what he was in 2022. I'm going to give the Bills a 55-45 in this one.
All right, that leads us now to week number 9. We got the Miami Dolphins again, 1 p.m. on CBS. The negatives, we are coming back from the West Coast. The Finns are 3 weeks off of a bye, so they had a chance 2 weeks previous to this game to sort of refresh a little bit. They're coming off of 2 1 p.m. games as well, so they'll likely be a lot fresher than the Buffalo Bills at this point in the season. The positives, again, the Dolphins have not proven that they can beat Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills unless it's 120 degrees on the sideline for the Buffalo Bills. That won't be the case in Orchard Park. This game, it's not 50-50 for me. Again, it's 55-45. I can listen to the 50-50 argument as that's the mark we gave them for the away game. But I think being at home, like when's the last time they beat us at home? I'd have to Google it because I think it's been a while.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you when the last time was that they beat us at home. And I agree. I mean,
Tyrod Taylor was our quarterback, or Nathan Peterman was like, it wasn't Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen's 2 losses were in Miami.
And then who knows, right? Maybe the Dolphins the week before, they're playing at home and against Arizona. Maybe that's like a bit of a trap game for them. And maybe they come in a little bit sort of uneasy into this game more so than usual. I give the Bills, look, the week 2 game, we gave the Dolphins the benefit of the doubt of being early in the season, being at home. Maybe it's a little humid. Maybe that's a factor. In this game at home in week 9, I'm giving the Bills a 55-45. I'm giving them that home field advantage.
All right, gonna put it into the tracker here, and then we are gonna move on to week number 10. The Buffalo Bills travel to Indianapolis to play the Colts at 1 p.m. on CBS. My notes here in terms of negative, positive, negative. Anthony Richardson's had some time to settle in 10 weeks into the season. Positives, the way he plays, he might honestly be hurt again, and we're playing Joe Flacco at that point. Like, who knows? So there's like sort of that question of how healthy will the Colts be? Will Anthony Richardson actually be that dude after 10 weeks? Or is it going to turn out that like he's not that dude and this is maybe a 60-40 game? A lot of sort of questions around the Colts. I think at the end of the day, the Bills are a better team than them on paper. Things can obviously change between now and when we play them 10 weeks into the season. But I have this as a 55-45 game because the Colts did make the postseason last year, and they do have a good coach in Shane Steichen, and they do look decent on paper, but I do not think they stack up against the Buffalo Bills unless a lot of things click for a guy like Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, right, with Anthony Richardson, but it doesn't seem like a team that's going to like pop off for 40 points. Now, I'll eat my words if that happens, but you look at the Colts coming into this one, they play 4 out of 5 before the Bills on the road, including 3 divisional road games. So they got at Jacksonville, at Tennessee, then they're home against Miami, a tough game, then at Houston, at Minnesota before the Bills come to town. That's a really tough stretch that the Colts have before the Bills come to town. Maybe they're reeling a bit. We don't know. Maybe they're going to get back at home and that's the momentum they need. But that's a really tough stretch to come in and then have to play the Bills after that stretch. So I'm giving the Bills a 55-45 here. I do like that this game's going to be inside. The Bills, no issues at all playing in that type of environment. I'm sure it's going to be welcome for the fans as well because we don't get to see them play in perfect conditions all that often, that late in like middle to late-ish part of the season. So I'll give the Bills 55-45 in this one.
Looking at week 11, one of the marquee games on the Bills schedule, 4:25 p.m. at home on CBS. We get the Kansas City Chiefs. The negatives is, Rashee Rice will probably be back from whatever suspension he's been given by week number 11. The positives, not really a positive for the players, but a positive for us. We don't have to listen to Chris Collinsworth because this is a CBS game. 50-50. I mean, that's what all these marquee games are on the Bills schedule, whether it's the Ravens or the Chiefs or the 49ers. It's Josh Allen and whatever the Buffalo Bills still have remaining by week 11 going up against one of the marquee teams in the National Football League. So obviously, to me, this is an easy 50-50.
Easy 50-50 for everything you said. I mean, I don't think it needs to be said much more than that.
And again, things change, right? Like, so, injuries could dictate things. I'm not gonna, knock on wood, wish injuries or project injuries on anyone, Bills included, but we see the way injuries affect some of these games. The Buffalo Bills probably beat the Kansas City Chiefs in Orchard Park in the playoffs if Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano are healthy. We've had this conversation a number of times this offseason, and that's not a petty Bills fan talking. I think most people objectively would agree with that. I think there are even some Chiefs fans in the world who would agree with that sentiment, agree with that statement. So things change a lot and rosters change a lot. So again, we could have a completely different conversation about this and really all games by the time we get to them on the schedule. Week number 12, we are in our bye week. So that is a perfect time, ladies and gentlemen. This is what you should do every bye week. You should go to picassospizza.net because this show is obviously sponsored by Picasso's Pizza. 4 great locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Buffalo Pizza since 1980. You can order online at picassospizza.net. And if you're an out-of-towner like us, you can even get it mailed to your home. And I can tell you from experience, it's just as good as getting it fresh from the restaurant. Again, that is picassospizza.net. Every bye week, you got to eat your feelings of having no Buffalo Bills football by ordering Picasso's Pizza. So that leads us to week number 13. The Bills coming off a bye. We got to wait until I have this as Sunday night, but I think it's a typo in my notes. I believe this is a Monday night football game, correct?
No, San Fran.
It is Sunday night?
Let me check. I'm checking.
I think I wrote it down
Bills,
wrong
San
in my notes.
Fran, Sunday Night Football.
Oh, it is Sunday Night Football. Okay, so I did write it down correctly. It is Sunday Night Football, 8:15 on NBC at home against the San Francisco 49ers. The negatives are obviously you're playing a really good football team. The positives, 49ers are going east to west. They're at Lambeau the week before too, so they're like west to Midwest, back to the like. Who knows? Maybe they go and they like stay in Buffalo or they stay somewhere like on the East Coast. Who knows how teams decide to sort of mitigate all of that traveling. And if there is a team that you want a bye week to prepare for, a team with a Kyle Shanahan run offense, a team with all those weapons that you have to think about, that's the kind of team that you want to have a bye week to prepare for. Obviously, it's a marquee game on the schedule, so it's going to be one of those 50-50 games for me.
50-50 games, and assuming no personnel sort of transactions happen with a trade or anything, that team's looking loaded again on offense with McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, George Kittle, added Pearsall to the mix. A lot of returning personnel, obviously a lot of returning coaching staff. So again, one of the best teams in the NFL, going to be tough, 50-50 game.
All right. Week 14, we again have to go on our second West Coast trip of the season. We are doing so on a short week We are at the Los Angeles Rams, 4:05 on Fox. I just listed the negatives. The positives, the Rams are at New Orleans the week before. So, again, a semi West Coast to East Coast trip for them. Maybe that mitigates a little bit of it. I'm pretty bullish, as I talked about on our QB tiering show. When I put Matthew Stafford in my top 10, I'm pretty bullish on this Rams offense. I think they're going to be able with that offensive line run at will with Blake Corum and Kyren Williams, and they got guys like Nakua and Cooper Kupp in the passing game with Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay calling the shots. I think they're a really talented football team. A lot of questions on defense, especially with Raheem Morris gone, Aaron Donald gone. But I think the Rams, one of my low-key hot takes is they're going to be one of the best teams in football this year. So I have this as a 50-50 game, especially considering the West Coast trip as well.
This is going to be a tough game. I mean, Matthew Stafford's healthy. That's been the thing with him over the last couple of years. When he's on and he's right, he's still one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Great arm, great accuracy. Obviously, he's not mobile, but he hasn't really needed to be. Nakua, the breakout star from last year as a rookie. Kupp should be back to full health. Again, don't know what it's going to be like at this point in the season, but for now, we're presuming the stars will be there, and that tandem with McVay running the show. Rams looking to get a little bit of revenge from 2 years ago, opening night, where the Bills really took it to them and beat them in LA. So I do think this is a 50-50 game.
All right, so I'm going to put that onto the chart here, and then we are up to week 15. This is a game that I'm not feeling great about considering its place on the schedule. We are at the Detroit Lions, 4:25 on CBS. The negatives, we are West Coast back to East Coast and then on the road again. The Lions are on 10 days rest because while we are playing the Rams out west, they are playing Thursday Night Football that week. So this is a tough game for the Buffalo Bills against a tough team with a lot of that core group, and the coaching staff are all returning. So that Lions team, I think, is going to get off to a hot start, and they're going to roll. It's a tough game, but again, as long as you have Josh Allen, this is one of those 50-50 games to me.
It's 50-50. This is going to be a really fun game, hopefully, right? I mean, this could have a lot of fireworks, right? You're playing inside, Ford Field, perfect conditions, late in the season. Should be no excuses for the offenses, right? I mean, this is going to be a fun one. Goff was one of the best quarterbacks in the league at home the last 2 seasons. Firepower is there. You get Laporta versus Kincaid. You get Jahmyr Gibbs against James Cook. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is one of now the highest paid receivers, rightfully so, in the league. It's going to be fun to see this game, but it is a 50-50 game. Dan Campbell's got that team in a really good spot, and that crowd will be fired up for this game for sure.
Week 16, we are versus New England for our first of 2 games in 3 weeks against the Patriots, 1 p.m. on CBS. The negatives, obviously, I think a lot of Bills fans would have liked to have seen the Patriots on the schedule earlier. That coaching staff led by Gerard Mayo, Alex Van Pelt, they are going to have time to establish themselves, to gel. By then, though, who knows what this Patriots team will look like? Maybe they will have sold off some pieces at the deadline because they weren't competitive. Maybe you're seeing the early stretches and the growing pains of Drake May because Jacoby Brissett started the season. So a lot of questions. The Patriots are in Arizona, so they're going West Coast to East and then have to go to Buffalo. So that's tough for them travel-wise. The Bills have a little bit of an advantage there as well. To me, as I said before, New England is going to have a competitive defense. They always have. That offense is better than it was last year. They're not going to be some slug, some pushover. They're probably going to be a team that could potentially hover around 500 if coached correctly. We don't know what Gerard Mayo is yet, but still, on paper, this has got to be a 60-40 game if you're a Buffalo Bills team that wants to make the playoffs, especially given you're playing a number 1 seed schedule and just how tough it is compared to the Dolphins and the Jets, who get the 2 and the 3 seed schedules.
This home game against the Pats has to be a 60-40 game for the Bills. I know it's late in the season. I think if you put this game in week 2 or week 3, it's an easy 60-40, right, for the Bills, because you have the new quarterback, you have the new coaching staff. I still think at this point, I'm going to put it as a 60-40. We don't know what Drake May is going to be. He could be really good.
Mhm.
But that team doesn't necessarily have a ton of firepower on the perimeter. I mean, they drafted one of our favorites, Javon Baker. I know that. Stevenson, Ramondre is going to look to have a bounce back
Mhm.
year running the ball. They did add Antonio Gibson as a compliment, but I just don't see a ton of firepower for this team offensively still. They should still be pretty good defensively. The Bills at home have to be a 60-40 against this team.
Week 17, we see the New York Jets again. This time it is in Orchard Park, 1 p.m. on CBS. I don't really have any negatives or positives. This is just a mano-a-mano division game. Obviously, injuries and things like that can play a role, can play a factor, but we really won't know about those things until December. But I will say this, at home, I'm willing to give the Bills 55-45 here, just like I was against the Dolphins. We saw them handle the Jets last year pretty easily at home. You have the home crowd, etc. I'm willing to go 55-45 here, but I don't know about you. Where you stand with this game?
The Jets, I don't love how the Bills match up against the Jets generally. And
Mhm.
so I know the Bills did that and they bounced back and they beat the Jets at home last year, the second time they played them. I want to kind of put this one right on that line the same way we did with the Jags where it's like
Mhm.
could be 55-45. I think it's better than 50-50, but I'm going to try to maybe like toe that line right there and put them right there on that line.
I am right there with you, and you notice there's a lot of teams to the top of this tiering chart, not so many towards the bottom where we have the 60-40 advantage. Finally, the season ends in Foxborough. Rumor is with Bill Belichick gone, all the comms are going to work just fine. The locker rooms will be bug free. The footballs will be fully inflated, so we don't have any of that to worry about as we head into Foxborough this season. Again, I don't have any notes here. I don't have any negatives. I don't have any positives. I can just say on paper, the Buffalo Bills are the better team. I guess we can probably sit here and argue between 55-45, 60-40. I personally had 60-40 just because I think the Bills are the better team. I Even though I think New England will be better this year, I don't think they'll be fighting for a playoff spot. So they might be playing some backups and some other guys by this time at the end of the season. To me, it's 60-40, but let me know what you think here.
I like it 60-40. Maybe we do
I don't
a
think the
lot
Bills are
a
I don't think the
total.
Bills are resting starters in this game.
Maybe we use the other line, the between the
Yeah.
55 and the 60 for this one. I lean more towards the 60-40, but let's throw them
Mhm.
on that line
We're
just
gonna go on
to
the
have a
line
little
again.
little
And
nuance here.
and I've heard a couple of people like I was listening to the Rich Eisen show. My wife and I were doing a subscription-free summer. So the only TV I get is Amazon Prime because we already paid for it, and Roku TV, which there are no good channels on Roku TV. So there's just the Rich Eisen channel. I was listening to Rich Eisen as background noise while I was doing something else. And they were just having fans call in and like go through their favorite team's schedule and give win-loss predictions. And the Bills fan who called in from Oklahoma, Bills fans everywhere, right? Uh, Predicted the Bills would lose this game to the Patriots because they'd be resting their starters.
Mm.
And Ralph Wilson Sr. comes in and says, Bills resting starters in this one, fingers crossed. I just don't see a world where the Buffalo Bills are going to be able to rest their starters. Like they are going to be an absolute dogfight to win the AFC East this year. They are going to be an absolute dogfight to clinch a playoff berth this year. Not because they're not good, but just because I think the talent around them in the AFC has gotten better, in
Mhm.
their AFC East has gotten better, and we're playing the number one schedule while there are other teams with easier schedules, specifically teams in Miami who play the number two schedule and New York who plays the number three schedule. So I think the Buffalo Bills are going to be fighting tooth and nail all the way through week 18. I think this is going to be a very important game for this football team.
Yeah, and it could be for seeding too, right? It might
Mhm.
not even be about like, maybe the Bills will have uh maybe the Bills won't even have the division wrapped up at that point, right? Because
Mhm.
they do play 3 division games in a row to end the
Yeah.
season. So we just don't know how things are going to look, especially heading into that first New England game in week 16. That week 16, 17, 18, 3 division games in a row to end the season is it's going to make things quite interesting, I think.
Are the Jets playing the Dolphins week 18?
I can tell you in just 1 second. Yes, they are. The Jets are at home.
if
against
you
Miami.
are if you're a conspiracy guy, right? The Bills and the Dolphins were the Week 18 game from the NFL schedule makers, and that ended up being for the AFC East. If you're a conspiracy person, the Bills are playing the Patriots and the Jets get the Dolphins. Could the NFL could the NFL cabal be sort of maneuvering a Jets Dolphins playing game there, or AFC title game there? But no, it'll be really interesting. Every single game on our schedule is going to be important. So
Well, how about
let
this though? The Jets, you know how we play New England
Mhm.
2 out of the last 3. The Jets play Miami week 14 and week 18, so pretty close together for them too at the end of the season.
So let's get into it. Let's make our predictions here. We have 850. If we put these things that we have on the line below the line, we have 8 50-50 games at Miami, Baltimore, Houston, at the New York Jets, Kansas City, San Francisco, the Rams, and Detroit. We have 5 55-45 games, Jacksonville, Seattle, Miami at home, Indy, the Jets at home. And then 60-40, we have Arizona, Tennessee, and New England twice.
Mhm.
So most of the Bills games this year are going to be 50-50 games or 55-45 games that we think could easily be maybe 50-50 games too. We had that conversation with Jacksonville. We had that conversation with Seattle because we got to go west. We had that conversation about Miami and the Jets. So a lot of those 55-45 games could be 50-50 games as well. Taking a look at this, Dave, like way
Mhm.
too early. You have time to amend this. We're not gonna hold anyone to this. What's your record position as prediction as Bills Are Electric comes in, says 11-6?
Yeah, so last year, my official prediction for the 2023 season was 11-6, and the Bills were
Mhm.
11-6. As it stands right now, I think I'm going 11-6 again right now because I do think
Mhm.
those 4 at the bottom, I'm gonna pencil those in for at least for now. I do think that there's a decent chance that out of those 50-50 games, the Bills could win more of those than they lose. I think the Chiefs are gonna be tough, the Niners, the Ravens, but I do think they could beat the Rams, Jets, Texans, Dolphins. Those are 4 that are winnable, and then there's another 3 to 4 in that middle section that I think if you think that there's 4 to 5 of those 55-45 games and the
Mhm.
Bills win 4 out of 5 of those, that's a pretty good hit rate there on that, and that gets you to about 11 wins conservatively,
Mhm.
I'd say. I know some people are gonna sit there and say 12, 13. Some even say less, 10, but I think it's in that 10 to 11 range, to be honest, and I think I'll
Mhm.
go right now, I'll say 11-6.
Yeah, I had 11-6 as well. My rationale was we had 8 50-50 games, so I was like, all right, let's take 4 of those. Then we had 5 55-45 games. I was like, all right, got to win 3 of those 5. That's 7. Then there are 4 games left that we considered 60-40. Got to sweep them. If we have hiccups this year, like we had against the Jets when they lost Aaron Rodgers, like we had against the Broncos, like we had against the Patriots, if we have hiccups like that, if we get off to a slow start like we did last year, I have a hard time seeing this team being able to dig its way out of it. So those 60-40 games, you got to win. Splitting the 50-50s, winning 3 of your 55-45s, and carrying your 60-40s puts us right there at 11-6. So 11-6 would be my record prediction as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have one more show this week. It will be a live premiere, meaning it'll be pre-recorded, but you can come in into the comment section and you can chat along with the people in the comment section as the broadcast is premiering. It'll premiere 9 p.m. Eastern after Buffalo late night, and it'll be a mailbag episode. I sort of put out the bat signal on social media this week. I asked people, hey, what are some questions, some topics you want to hear us talk about? You guys did awesome. You responded with some great topics, some great questions, and we are going to answer those in a live premiere on Thursday with a little mailbag episode. Dave, any thoughts before we head out of here this evening?
No, the schedule is tough. We say this every year. The Bills do have an especially tough schedule. I get it. Things change, but there are some fun games on here too. At Detroit is fun. At Houston is really fun. I probably won't be able to go to any games this year, but if I was going to
Mhm.
pick a game out to try to make my way to, I would really love to go to that Houston game from North Carolina here. Wouldn't be too bad of a flight. for me to get there. But man, that would be a fun one to go to. We'll see.
If it wasn't so darn expensive, I
Uh-huh.
would try to get to LA for that Rams game, but there's
Yep.
no way my broke ass could afford uh by broke, I mean spending all my money on my newborn child. There's no way I could afford Rams ticket prices, and it's maybe not even the parking prices. I couldn't afford the $100 parking prices that they got out there in Los Angeles. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Smash that like button, click the share button, text or email or message this show to anyone you think would enjoy it and would love to join us here on Monday nights. We are also a podcast as well. So if you want to listen in audio only, you can go to any major podcasting platform and you can just type in Air Raid Buffalo Football and you can get the audio version of these shows as well. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you guys in the comment section. And until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comment section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!